Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring how you can expand your future. So we could call this episode The 3 Lives You Could Be Living, right? Because that's basically what we're talking about, is 3 different trajectories that you, by the end of this episode, you will have played out these 3 different trajectories of your life. The work that I want to do today is basically shifting, quietly challenging any of the ideas that you are so certain about that it has to be a certain way in your life, right? I want you to open your mind to thinking about the possibilities of your entire life differently. My husband, Victor, and I were listening to Richard Feynman, who is a physicist, and he is long deceased, I believe, but this was on a YouTube channel about time-space continuum, like all of this quantum physics that was literally blowing my mind. But my point of bringing that up is that it got me thinking about the expansion of our thoughts, that we love certainty so much as human beings, right? Uncertainty is scary. And if you think about how it's sort of baked in, this our love of certainty, which is an illusion, of course, but is baked in because from a physiological point of view, if we go way, way, way back in time to the cave people time, it was uncertainty could equal death. So there are real reasons why, but the way that our mind makes up certainty where it does not exist is something that is can limit what we see as possible for our very futures. So in today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down 3 different ways of looking at your future based on a course at Stanford University, and it's called the Odyssey Plan. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'll walk you through it. It's all stuff that you can find online too, but I want to tell you walk you through from a psychological point of view how I think that you can apply it in your life. And I don't mean this in like a dramatic blow up your life kind of way, right? Not that. It's more about getting clarity about the choices you actually have, right? It's a different way of looking at your life. So I saw I was reading about the Odyssey Plan, and this concept itself comes out of the Designing Your Life program at Stanford University. And the basic idea is this: there isn't just one life that's right for you, right? There are multiple variations or versions of your life that could make you happy, fulfilled, and aligned. So multiple, more than one. And most of us never really consider that. And I'm always challenging myself to look at, are you limiting yourself with your limiting beliefs, or do you want your life to stay the same so much because it's familiar? And I see this in my therapy practice all the time, and maybe you'll recognize this in yourself, is that we're trying so hard to get this one life choice right. So it's like the perfect career, or the perfect, the 2.2 kids and the picket fence, like the perfect relationship, or somehow the perfect path. And underneath all this desire for perfectionism is anxiety, right? Because if there's only one right choice, whether it comes to love, whether it comes to careers, then you can get it wrong so easily, so to speak. I've always been a huge believer. I myself have had multiple careers, and I've always been a big believer that all of us have the potential, if you want it, to have multiple different careers. For many high-functioning women, especially if you identify as an HFC, a high-functioning codependent, right, there can be this intense pressure to get it right and to have it all be just so, right? So why is that? Well, as HFCs, we've been conditioned, right, not to disappoint other people. So if there's an expectation from others put on us that influences us, there's an expectation that we'll make good choices, right, that we're smart, that we're studious, that we're dutiful, right, that we're responsible, that we're reliable. In choosing sort of one life or one potential path to do it up, right, what we're really doing when we're HFCs is we're trying to choose a path that doesn't upset anyone else, that doesn't destabilize anything in our lives, right? And won't make it look like we've made a mistake. And I love the idea, the third, in the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights for my first book, Boundary Boss, the third Boundary Boss Bill of Rights is you have the right to make mistakes, to course correct, and to change your mind. And I wrote that very specifically because I know, being a high-functioning codependent in recovery myself, that giving myself permission to make mistakes or change my mind about relationships, about work, about career, when I was younger, it was not even a possibility, right? Which is why I stayed in relationships way longer than I should have in my young life. And maybe you identify with that. Maybe you're doing that as well. But there's so much pressure when you are this executive people pleaser, right? This super high functioning people pleaser. Because when we think about what high functioning codependency is, that aptly describes it. We are overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the situations, the finances of the people in our lives, to the detriment of our own internal peace. But we are also deeply invested in what other people think about us, and specifically that other people are not disapproving of what we're doing. That can keep you on a straight and narrow path that overlooks other paths that might be more satisfying, that might be more joyful. And really, you can do anything, right? Like, you can change your mind at any point. We don't have to stay on this path. I was a talent agent. Many of you know this, before I became a psychotherapist. And I was in that career for almost a decade. And people did not understand. When I said that I was quitting that job, I was negotiating contracts for supermodels and celebrities. It was the 90s. So this was considered a very sexy job. People thought it was great. I was making a lot of money. And when I told my father I was going to be leaving that career to go to NYU to get my master's in social work and become a psychotherapist, he was like, what? Basically, his words were, sounds weird. I was like, why? Thanks for your support. And I didn't need him necessarily. I was like, okay, well, you could just be supportive because it's what I'm doing, whether you think it sounds weird or not. But for him, think about the difference in ages. So my father was born in 1937, right? Married in 1958. So culturally, what has changed so much is that my father had one job. They hired him in college and he stayed at that job until he retired at 50. So, 30-something years in the same job. And that was very common. And that was considered very successful then. And we really don't see that much now. It's not like that really at all. The internet changed that. Startups changed that. So anyway, when I was leaving that career, and in a way, I was seeking a different path, very similar to what the Odyssey Plan is going to be. It was hard to make that change. And it took I contemplated it for about 3 or 4 years before making the change. Anyway, I love that the Odyssey Plan. Let's talk about it, but it makes it so easy to do this. So hopefully if you're considering a change, it won't take 3 or 4 years for you to actually pull the trigger on it. So instead of trying to figure out how to have like one perfect life, what the Odyssey Plan teaches us to do is that you're going to design 3 different versions of your life. So each one realistic, each one that could work, each one reflects a different aspect of you. So, and this part is really important. We're not choosing anything yet, right? We're just expanding. Because from a psychological point of view, we have to pre-contemplate, and then we have to contemplate, and then we have to make decisions, and then we have to take action. Like, there's a lot of psychological stuff that happens before we make changes. All we're doing in this exercise is expanding your perspective on what is possible for you, right? Because a lot of times when we feel stuck, it's not because we don't have other options. It's because we're only allowing ourselves to see one option. So from a psychological perspective, right, this exercise is powerful for a whole bunch of reasons that I already said, but it reduces perfectionism, because that really can keep us trapped. If there isn't only one right path, then you can stop gripping so tightly, right? If we're not so positive that the path has to look exactly this way. The second thing is we're interrupting this fear-based decision making, right? So this, when we're allowing ourselves to play and to think about this as like possibilities, it's less about fear, right? You start asking, we move away from what if I do it wrong or what if I choose wrong to what are my actual options? Allow myself to dream, allow myself to think. And third, and this is the part that I like the most, is that it reconnects you to the part of yourself that may have gone dormant. And this is even people living lovely, perfectly legitimate lives. There's no way that at some point we don't get up, and as my friend and mentor David G would say, we get up, burn through the day, drop, and do it all over again. It's very easy to go to the same restaurants, have sex on the same day, see the same people, do the same things at work. And I'm certainly a very habitual person as much as I try. And I consciously bring in things that I'm uncertain about because I don't want to be so habitual. But by nature, I think we all are. So if that part of you has sort of gone to sleep a little bit or been a little bit dormant, this exercise can help sort of wake it up. Because really, many of us, we're not just choosing our lives because we have all these unconscious things going on. We're like choosing to live within this little box, right? This constraints or these limiting beliefs that we were raised in. So it could be your family system, your culture, gender conditioning, a father wound, a mother wound. We have all of these things that influence what we see, right? All of those things inform what you think is possible for you. So when you create multiple life paths, you start to gently challenge those. Sometimes they're inherited beliefs, sometimes they're just repeated beliefs, right? So let's walk through it quickly, how to do it. And I will put this all in a guide for you. Go to terricole.com/guide to get it. I want you to keep this grounded, right? This isn't, even though there's dreams involved, right? Because if you end up doing something different, but this is possibility as opposed to fantasy. We're not creating something that's so far away you couldn't do it. So plan number 1 is your current path, right? But we're going to be more intentional than perhaps you've been being. So this is the life path you're currently on, your current career, your current structure, your current direction, but you're allowed to refine it. So ask yourself, if I stay on this path, how do I want to do it differently? Do I want more balance? Right? Do I need more boundaries? Do I want more creativity, more leadership, more rest, more downtime? So we're purposefully and intentionally taking this life off autopilot and moving it into conscious choice. You're going to take your time and answer all of those questions. And all of that will be in the guide for you. But it was going to require you. And I think that you should do these plans. Listen, if you want to do a marathon session, feel free. I like the idea of sitting down and really dedicating and devoting maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes to plan 1, which is current life. And now we're going to do plan 2, which is the alternative life. So this is the life you might pursue if your current path suddenly disappeared, right? And you don't lose your worth, right? You don't lose your capabilities, but your current role or structure, let's say, is no longer available. So if I couldn't do my podcast, or if I was no longer writing books, what would I be doing, right? And this is where things can get interesting, because if you remove something, your mind is going to want to fill it, right? And I've walked some of my clients through this process, and they've immediately had an epiphany, like, oh my God, I have more options than I've been letting myself see. And again, getting to these options, you guys, that's going to be, so I'm going to say option 2, right? The plan 2 is the alternative life. And I would say that's a second journaling session where you really sit down. And you can also, once you do this, you can meet up with friends and share about it, because there's something really enlivening about doing it. And plan 3 is the wild card. And actually, I love this. So this is the one that people resist the most, at least that I've seen in my therapy practice. But it's the one, right, that the life that you would live if money were not an issue, approval were not an issue, fear was not an issue, right? If, and I did this many, many years ago at a training that I had done. So if money, time, energy, and if success were guaranteed, what would you do, right? What would you try? Who would you become? What part of you has maybe been waiting to be seen, but in your current incarnation, it cannot be. And let's get clear. This isn't about like quitting your life, right? We're not talking about tomorrow I quit my life. It isn't that, but it's about listening to yourself more honestly. A lot of times people feel like, I wished I had done that, but I waited too long. And I'm hoping, and what I'm thinking with the Odyssey Plan and the way that I've walked my clients through it is that that also is a construct. That is a limiting belief that you have. I have many of my therapy clients and women in my mastermind and in my groups and in my Terri Cole membership that are going back to school in their 60s and 70s, right? It's never, I really believe this, it's never too late to become who you would have been. And I think that's a Bernard Shaw. I don't know. I know that that's someone else's quote, and I'm sure I butchered it, but you get my point. I know you do. So this is about shaking up these habituated behaviors that we have and being, if we allowed ourselves to want what we want with all our hearts, if we actually had the audacity to, and the courage to put ourselves out there in that way, what would it look like for you? And here's the important part of this. I want you to walk away from this with the understanding that you don't have to choose one of these plans immediately, right? The point is not to pick, right? The point is to expand what is possible and what you think is possible. Because when you can see that there are multiple variable versions of your life, there are multiple viable versions, not variable versions. You know what I'm saying, you guys? You don't have to live just this one life. And you can bring in some elements. So the mindset shifts perhaps to, I'm not stuck, right? I'm sovereign. I have agency. People are changing their lives all the time. I mean, people are moving away from places they thought they never would in like the last third of their life. I know folks who are like, I just moved to Costa Rica because I wanted to. And you're like, wow. But what happens is when we feel that we're not trapped in our choices, when we give ourselves permission to course correct or to change our mind, that shift alone can reduce so much anxiety. And for, us HFCs who tend to overfunction, are always considering other people, if you have a hard time identifying what you want, this exercise can really be uncomfortable, which really means, please do it. Because what does it require? It requires you to center yourself, right? Your heart's desire, not your partner, not your kids, not clients, not parents, you. And a lot of times that brings up guilt, right? It can bring up fear. It can bring up the belief that wanting more or wanting something different than what we have is somehow being like mean or ungrateful or disloyal to the people in our life now. And I just want to assure you, it is not. This is just information. And you're allowed to want more. You can love what you have and still want more or want different. So I just want to leave you with this thought. There is not one life that is right for you. There are many possible lives that can be meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned for you. So the question is not, what is the perfect choice? The question is, am I willing to consider what I actually want, right? So I want you to take some time this week, write out your 3 plans, don't overthink, don't edit yourself so quickly, because again, it's not perfection. It's just getting it up and out. Let yourself see what might be there for you. Because clarity really doesn't come from pressure. It comes when we allow ourselves to do it differently, to think about it differently, to expand what we think is possible. So I hope that this episode resonated with you, did something. If it did, share it with the people in your life who you think might also need to expand. And I hope that you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.